Alright, let's have a practical exercise here. So let's read a file that shows a phone number and make sure it's a valid phone number. So what's a valid phone number? Let's create a new class, and I'm going to call this phone number app. So give it a main. Okay, so what's a valid phone number? So this will read a text file of and will retrieve the phone number. A valid phone number, we'll say, is 10 digits long, right? So 3 for the area code, 3 for the main 3, and then 7, 4 digits for the end. Valid phone number, so it has 3 digits. It's 10 digits long. What else? We have there is no 911. Let's just have it be in. How about? I think one of them is area code cannot start in 0 or 9, and then there can be no 911 in the phone. I think those are a couple criteria. Okay, so first let's create our text file in Notepad. Now we're going to generate this ourselves. What really would make this significant is if we could read a series of phone numbers, but we haven't learned how to do that yet. So let's just, for starters, have a phone number just like this, right? So let's make sure ours is working fine. So I'm going to do save as, and I'm going to call this phone number. This is in our Estate University files library. Okay, phone number.txt. Okay, close this down here, and again, what's our process? We're going to have a string file name equals, let's pull up here this path, Estate University files. Here we go. Okay, copy this here, and our file is phone number.txt. Okay, alright, good. We have our file, and then what we're going to do, we're going to say file equals new file from the file name, and then we're going to have our, bring in the file, okay, we're going to have our buffered reader, br equals new buffered reader file reader from the file. Okay, so actually not all these things are necessary when we're just reading one line. In fact, we can enhance this a little bit. So let's say let's bring in these file readers. Why is that an issue here? Why is this causing an issue? Let's see. Buffered reader, file. Oh, we need a new file reader. Now we can bring in that. There we go. Okay. Alright, so let's put this in a try catch. Okay. Okay, so what we can do is just read, let's just do one at a time. So let's do br dot, we'll do string, this is phone num equals br dot read line. Okay. And that's going to be an input-output exception, so we're going to add a catch to the surrounding try. Okay, good. So let's say here is sysout error file not found. Okay, and then here we're going to say sysout error could not read file. Okay. Alright, so after we get the data, now we're going to close. Okay, alright. So now once we get out of that try, we're going to print the phone num. Okay. And this needs to exist outside the try catch, up here, equals null. And then we're going to define it inside the try. There we go. Okay. Alright, there we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is is check for our valid phone number, which is right here. So I'm going to put this down here. Okay, so not here, right? But I guess we could do it actually as we're reading, but let's not interrupt the reading, and let's just say try this statement here, right? And we're going to catch some user-defined error. We'll say sys out, you know, some error message. Okay, so how do we do that, right? We had I'm going to put it right down here. I'm going to say we had a class, and we're going to call this. Let's have an exception for each of the different types. So let's have a 10 digits exception, right? We have a what's our other exception? Area code exception, and we also have a class. We can say emergency exception, right, which is 911. Okay, so we want to look for each of these types of exceptions, right? We want to look for a 10 digits exception, or, and let's see, we need to extend, right? Extends exception, and we need to do this for each of our exception classes. Okay, so we're going to try and catch a 10 digits exception E, right? And let's see, why is this? We never. Okay, it's never thrown. Okay, so now we need to handle this, right? So we need to say if, right, phone num. So here's where we need to have our little algorithm, right? So phone num dot length does not equal, what number do we want? Do we want 9, 10? We want 9, right? Because 9 means that there's actually 10 digits. So we say throws new 10 digits exception. Okay, now we can actually catch this. We actually catch this exception now, and then we'll want to print sys out error phone number is not 10 digits. Okay, good. Let's actually, this is all I think we would need to do. So let's run this first. Error phone number is not 10 digits. Okay, so I think that it was 10. It should be 10 here. Okay, there we go. So there we go. So in fact, it should be 10. So string started at position 1. Okay, so we can enhance this a little bit, right? We can say if we have a constructor, right, we would say something like 10 digits exception, and we'll take some string number. This is our constructor, and we'll say, let's see here, we'll say, see, if we want the toString method, right? If we're trying to get the public string toString, then we want to return something like 10 digits exception, then concatenate the number. Then we need to have this number being a global variable in this context, and say this dot num equals num. Right, now we can call the 30 10 digits exception. We want to pass the phone num. Right, now we're going to basically create an exception object, which is going to be handled through the exception class. And when we output, we're going to print error phone number. There we go. And then we're going to print sys out. We're going to print our e dot toString method. Okay, so let's pull up that me pull up this phone number again, and let me change this to a 9-digit phone number. Run this there. There we go. There's our printed error statements in our exception. Okay, so that's one possible error. What's another possible error? Let me clean this up here. Another possible error is the area code start. So we can say if phone num, let's see, dot substring 0 and 1, right? So what's 0.1? That's the first character. If that equals 0, I should say 0, or phone num dot substring, again at 0 to 1, if it equals 9, then we're going to throw a new let's see, this is area code exception. Throw a new area code exception. Once again, we'll pass the phone num. Okay, and basically we can copy this exact same formula down, but instead of, this is area code exception is our constructor, we're going to take the num, there we go, and our message is area code exception. Okay, so let's see what our error is here. We would need to handle this area code exception, so we can just add this as a catch, say area code exception E, and basically we're going to say sysout error phone number, we'll say has invalid area code, and we'll also print here e.toString. Okay, alright, so let's change our file then. So it's going to have 10 digits again, so change it back to 10 digits. So now this will run fine. Okay, so now let's change this to start with 0. And there is our error. Okay, so that there's something wrong here. Let's see here. Let's print this. Make sure that we are reading this correctly. So sysout. There we go. Let's print out what we're actually comparing here. 0. Okay, so we are getting it. Oops. So we're getting the right test condition. So we want to see if this or if this condition. So one of these should be true. Run this again. Okay, actually when we were comparing strings, we should do dot equals, I believe. So there we go. So instead of equals 9, we're going to do dot equals 9. Let's see, close off this parenthesis there. Okay, so now this should work here. There we go. Phone number has invalid area code. Okay, so now we have both methods working. In fact, let's just make sure, let's have a working area code back to this. And we have, good, so both of these have passed. Okay, then last one here is finally if, let's see, this is the one. Okay, so this one is a little bit tricky, right? So we need a loop that's going to actually go through each number and see if it's going to equal 911. So we're going to iterate through the entire set. So we're going to start at 0, so n equals 0, and less than phone num dot length, and then n plus plus. Okay, so if n at or phone num at n dot, we want to say if this, let's see what's going on here. we want to do, it's called dot character at, or not character, we want to do the substring also. We want to do phone num dot substring at n comma n plus 1. And we want to close this out here. Okay, let's see. Well, let me write this over again. Phone num dot substring. Want this one here. We want to start at n, and we just want to read one character, right? Let's see. Why is that not? Why is it not like that? Oh, we want to say if it equals. So if this dot equals 9. Okay, so it's a little cumbersome just to grab this right here. Okay, so in other words, we want to see if, let me open up the file, if this number is equal to 9, or if this number is equal to 9, if this number is equal to 9. So we're going to find out, we want to isolate each value, and if there's one that equals 9, we want to see if the next two numbers are 1, 1. So first of all, we don't need to go all the way to the length. We can go to the length minus 2, right? Because it can end in 9, 1, because it just can't end in 9, 1, 1. So if we find a number that's 9, then what we want to do, close the parentheses, then we want to see if the phone num dot substring at let's see, we want n and then n plus 2. If these dot equals 1, 1. Okay, let's make sure we have this going here. My parentheses might be a little bit off here. If phone num dot substring equals this, there we go. So in other words, if we find a 9, we want to see if the next two digits, actually we want to go n plus 1 to n plus 3 equals 1, 1. If so, then we're going to throw a new emergency exception. Okay, so if we do catch that, then we need to handle it with a catch clause. And for now, again, let's leave the implementation alone for just a second and say this out. Error invalid 911 found. 911 sequence found. Okay, so let's run this now and make sure that we have nothing wrong. Okay, so it passed all of our tests for a good set of data. Let's update our phone number to actually include a 911 in here. So if there's a 911, there's our invalid 911 sequence. Good. If there's a 912, let's see if that works. Okay, so that's fine. If there's a 921, very good. Okay, so we've handled all of our exceptions appropriately, and the order of priority actually doesn't really matter because well, one's going to happen before the other. So, and as soon as you get one error, then the actual block will execute or will leave. So, only one of these errors can execute. So again, if you want to add the implementation we did earlier for having a constructor here with the emergency exception, that's fine. You can do that, which is just copying this down, and instead of area code exception, it's emergency exception is our constructor, and then that's our message right there. So if we have a 911 sequence, then we want the emergency exception. So where did that go? Emergency exception. Oh, so now we have the constructor, so we need to pass the number. And let's see, not number, but the phone num. There we go. Okay, there we go. So, and then of course we want to print the e.toString. Okay, so there we have it. So quite a lab that we have here, a project of making sure we have a valid area code. And what I want to do is actually expand this one more time to say, well, what about if we have a series of, right? What if we have not just one phone number, but what if we have, right, multiple phone numbers, right? So let's make sure we can get all these errors. So let's have a couple of different things here. And I'm just going to make up some different possible errors and scenarios. Okay, so I have a series of phone numbers. Now I'm going to save this. So now I want to change my string phone number, and I want to have, say, string phone numbers, phone nums. Okay, now because we haven't learned about the collections framework yet, we need to know how many numbers are in our that we're testing. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're going to have 9 types, so 9 data types. So we need to do a new string of size 9. Right, this is our array. And we need to know this again because we're going to add it each time. So every time we're going to read the line, we're then going to put phone nums. Let's see. So here's, okay, so what we need to do is inside this try catch block, we are going to have a loop. So we're going to do something, and we're going to execute this statement and put, let's see, we need to have our integer I equal to 0, and then we're going to do I++. So let's do this. Let's do a for loop. We'll do for integer I equals 0, I less than, again, phone nums dot length I++. Okay, now inside this for loop is where we're going to then read this file. Okay. So we don't need our index outside. Okay, so alright, I know a couple of things here. We're actually going to have to do this line outside, right? So we're going to have to do this outside the for loop, right? Because once we actually open the file, we don't want to open the file again. So when we're inside the for loop, this is where we're going to do the magic. We're going to do phone nums now at I equals this read line method. Okay, and when we are done with this for loop, then we're going to close. There we go. This should do it here. Okay, so it might take some time for you to catch up here. So what I'm doing here is I made an array of size 9 because I had to know that ahead of time. I'm doing my try on the outside because I don't want to open this file multiple times. I want to open it one time. Once I open the file, then I will iterate through the number of times or the number of records we have, and for each time we read the line, I'm going to place that data inside our phone nums. Okay, and then as we go through, let's see here. I also then want to put this, right? So I want to put this inside a for. So for integer I equals 0, I++ or I less than the phone nums dot length I++. Okay, so put this all inside the try, or all inside the for, I should say. Okay, so let's see here. To make things easiest, let's just say phone num equals phone nums at I. So that way I don't need to actually rewrite all my code here. So I'm just creating a new local variable every time we iterate through here.